Okay, let's call to order the meeting of the Upper Feather River Integrated Regional Water Management Group. And I think we'll start out with, oh, that's right, that's my other one. This one works really good. It's real class in this operation. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Anyone has? No? Hearing none. This would be public comment opportunity. If any member of the public would like to address the group on an issue not on the agenda, this would be the time to do it. If you have something you'd like to say that fits with an agenda item, if you'll hold that and raise your hand when we call that item, we'll recognize you at that point in time. Is there any member of the public that would like to speak on something? Bob, you're giving me body language like you might.
I think I might want to share.
Okay.
I was just trying to share with Jerry. You know, those of you who sat on the drought task force were hearing about foreclosed water woes. One of them was that we had 2 wells in the city that were put in when the Department of Fish and Wildlife treated Lake Davis for pike. And then the federal EPA raised the threshold of arsenic, and they're no longer considered good for human consumption without a couple $1 million wellhead treatments. It just so happened that one of our staff people bumped into a fellow staffer in Reno from the South Truckee Water Utility District that's merging with another utility district that had a brand new arsenic wellhead treatment plant. And they gave it to Portfolio.
Fantastic. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, easily just street value, just the pipes are $250,000. And so the council authorized not to exceed $40,000 to go get it, bring it back.
That is really good.
Yeah. So that and the fact that we're laying a new line to Golden Springs will definitely help us next summer if the agencies decide they want to try to turn off the water.
And we're still going ahead with the Plymouth Amendment.
Yeah.
In the settlement agreement too, which I guess they'll have sometime by the end of 15.
Right. Our only concern is that, as you know, the Plymouth Amendment says as long as there's water in the lake.
Right.
and it's dropping.
That's looking iffy.
Yeah. So that's good news. I wanted to share.
That's wonderful. Okay, anyone else?
You know, I think I'm going to talk about this Orville article.
Okay.
My concrete this morning sent an article to me. Lake Orville passed a milestone Thursday shortly after 10 a.m. The lake surface elevation dropped below 650 feet. That's 5 feet below the record level low of 640. Above the record level low of 645, which was set in September of 77. With the lake level dropping about a half foot a day, that record could be broken by Thanksgiving, barring significant rain. Thursday's showers aren't likely to do the trick, according to the National Weather Service. About 6.60 inches of rain fell at the dam, and rainfall amounts were less than an inch at higher elevations. At 650 feet, the lake is 250 feet below the 900 foot considered full. It's just 46 feet above the 604 foot level where the lake's considered a deck pool. At that point, it's too low to manage and too low to generate power. That one really, they paid for that dam cover with that power. And then Thursday, the lake was at 26% capacity with 912,096 acre-feet of water storage. That's 43% of the historical average of 2.1 million acre-feet in the lake at November 12th. And that's typical of the North State. Shasta's 24% capacity, Trinity's 23% capacity, and Folsom's 30%. So there's no water out there.
Anyone else? Okay. Action agenda item 1 is draft of the Feather River IRWM program memorandum of understanding.
Want to do a roll call?
Sure.
Jerry Clark?
Here.
Paul Lawrence? Kelly Swafford. Russell Lee.
Here.
Darren Minnick.
Here.
Jim Roberti.
Here.
Sabrina Cunningham. Here. Tom Yeagerhofer. Jeffrey Green.
Here.
Joe Hoffman. Carol Thornton, and Clayton Redwood. So the last management group meeting, Andy presented some background information on the 2009 review and the need for an updated memorandum of understanding. At that time, a draft MOU was presented for consideration, and after some discussion, it was decided that this would take that draft to various respective boards for discussion. And so today we're asking for approval or direction on the draft language and further direction if approved on how to get it out for signature.
Did any of us do as expected and take it to the policy? I know you were doing that with the water center. Let's start with
And typically presented to the Mighty Center Consortium, and they are still reviewing. With the Humbug Valley acquisition, the Lake Dominor parcels around through the Stewardship Council, that's been the forefront of their position.
and that's certainly what I'm understanding. That's a huge thing. Bill, you
Just the ICD and I didn't get any feedback.
nothing about
As
this.
soon as I was
We can always hope.
Yeah, the water company actually doing fine.
So you think you're comfortable with it? Russell or Russell?
What our RCD meets next week, so I can
Yeah, well, you probably won't have until we get, yeah, until we get finalized. So there's everybody's report.
I do
It's
have,
in process.
what I did, and I'll present this to the Forest Service shortly, is I pulled out the old MOU that Alice Carlton signed for doing this. Read through it, and when I was, they may be able to just replicate this. I was hoping some Forest Service people were here today so I could give them copies, and I'll shop this around with the Forest. So I'll give you this if you get it.
And that's my next question. Are you going to, you yourself going to be doing outreach to the signatories in addition to the possible groups?
I think we were looking for some direction on how we should proceed with that. We should contact each of the 2009 signatories and present to them, or what was the best approach?
Seems to me that would be, ultimately, in order to get people to sign it, I think that's what we want. So it's just too easy to have something like this that is on the back burner, and no one wants to make a decision. So my guess would be to try to start getting on their agenda and go talk directly to them. And take a copy with the request at this time.
The work groups are also a good idea.
That's what I was gonna say, that's exactly what I was gonna do. What groups you're at.
With everybody too. Yeah, I think so. So what's your target date for trying to get the MOU signed? Or do you have one?
Don't have one. The work groups will be all meeting within the next month to 6 weeks, probably. So we could start there, and then eventually if there's we'll work out that way.
Well, it seems to me that this is just by the sense of the draft, it's a two-step process, and which is going to make it twice as long. If a group looks at this and says, I'm good with this, then see, we have to wait for the second step to come by and get them to sign. So it seems like if this draft is okay, the problem is that if anybody makes any amendments to this in this whole process, And if they sign this draft, we wouldn't be
Then
have to
everybody has
re-sign
to
it.
re-sign.
So I'm just bringing that up, if there's a way that we could just understand that if you look at all the signatures, that's a long process. It would take quite some time to contact every one of these folks twice to get this. I don't know, I'm just kind of a complainer with those solutions.
Maybe give us some suggestions.
Well, in this group, I know Trina just said that, maybe the consortium needs to look at it a little bit more. How is everybody else doing in terms of working with it?
I'm fine with it. I think it's good.
I don't see any sheep and dogs here
Yeah.
it's going to be an issue that I'm missing a whole bunch of. So what, are you kind of getting where I'm headed here? I said, if we as a board think this is a pretty good deal, we could approve this as a document and then ask for signatures. And then if the signatures, if somebody says, I'm not signing this piece of junk because we have section 2 in it, then we could go back and listen to them and deal it later. But we could make this a one-step process if we as the board said we like it. So if somebody had a motion to accept this, then we could accept it and then we could pass it off for signatures. You want to look at it?
Is that what you just said?
That's what I just said.
I think that sounded like a motion.
It was a motion.
I'll second that.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed?
That
Roll it.
might assist Trina to know that when she brings it forward to them, that, you've got that motion.
Right, I think that's actually a good process.
Thanks, Trina.
Yeah, good. And probably we'll have to.
Yeah, if somebody sees something wrong, then we can make it.
Okay. Anything else on that item? Item 2, stakeholder outreach.
So the stakeholder involvement plan was introduced at the last management group meeting. That document, and it outlines our plan for outreach to the stakeholders, tribes, disadvantaged communities, and the public to encourage their involvement in the plan process. The SIP includes information about the update process, the management group's roles and responsibilities, the work groups, and communication plan that identifies the schedule of the management group meeting milestones, and also a timeline. So at the last management group meeting, 2 sections were filled out for consideration, the decision-making process and then the meeting guidelines. Both of those were approved with some modifications to the decision-making process, which have been included in the draft document that's included in the packet. Some other revisions to the plan in your packet, the meeting milestones have been edited somewhat to make up the project development schedule somewhat. And then also distribution of the chapter review schedule is revised somewhat to make it more evenly distributed here too. We added some contact information for the work group coordinators, such as general information, contact email, and then we updated the website address and included the process and timeline for this. So the SIP is intended to be a living document, and we recommend reviewing it periodically just to make sure that we're still on track and that it doesn't need to be updated. So today what we're requesting is approval and or direction to staff regarding this SIP, and then if it's approved, we'd like to post it on the website.
Anyone have discussion or questions regarding the stakeholder outreach today? Hearing none?
It looks good.
Yeah. So does that mean you'd like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, Bill?
I'll second.
Yeah, okay. All in favor of approving it and directing staff to vote it on the website? Opposed? Item 3, mission statement. I had asked Julie to come up with, I've worked on a number of mission statements in my life, and knowing that it was a very painful teaching process. I asked her to come up with some suggested statements that we could start and take a look at and kind of work over. So, if Eva, would you like to talk about
Sure.
where you went with that?
So basically what I did is I reviewed the 2005 plan, and then I also took a look at the 2009 the RAP, the region acceptance process application that was submitted, and then also the 2009 MOU. And then I also looked at a number of other IRWM mission statements throughout the state. And so I drafted some language based on those, and we did come up with 5 suggestions for just similar discussion and what direction you guys would like to go. And I can read through each of those individually, and then if you want to discuss them after each one, or how would you like to?
I'd suggest you read through them for the audience's sake.
Okay. So I did include them on the PowerPoint just so you for the audience to read them. To provide stability and consistency in planning, management, and coordination of resources within the Upper Feather River watershed, and to implement projects to benefit the region. To ensure that IRWM funding and other future funding is expended in the best possible way to enhance the many beneficial uses of water and other resources in the Upper Feather River region for the benefit of the region itself and for Greater California. And this one is based on language that was in 2009. Another suggestion, the mission of the Upper Feather River IRWM program and Regional Water Management Group is to provide water managers, water users, and the people of the region current information about local water issues and watershed conditions, to support the development of a shared understanding of current and future water management challenges and opportunities, to foster broad stakeholder input and support, and to develop a plan and priority actions for a durable water future in the Upper Feather River Basin. This next one is based on language that was in the region acceptance process application. To effectively perpetuate local control and regional collaboration on water management portfolio with broad stakeholder support to address regional priorities within the Upper Feather River watershed. Another option is to implement an integrated strategy that guides the Upper Feather River region toward protecting, managing, and developing reliable and sustainable water resources. The mission of the Upper Feather River IRWM program Regional Water Management Group is to promote a healthy Upper Feather River watershed through community involvement in stewardship, restoration, and education.
Anybody have anything that comes out that they love or pieces that they want?
It's pretty straightforward.
The water one?
That's number, what would be number 4. And I like in number 1, I think number 1 is too lengthy. Those mission statements should just kind of be really good. But the language I like in there is the first part of the first sentence, which is the sustainability and consistency in planning, management, and coordination of resources within the Upper Feather River. So I'm thinking, I also like number 4, and I'm thinking that sentence, stopping with the watershed, on top of what's already in number 4, would make it pretty much just a statement like thing. Because basically, I'm trying to think through the mission statement of what is it we're really trying to do without a whole bunch of extra government names in there. And really it is exactly that, to look at stability and consistency in the planning and management and coordination. And the way to do that is to implement an integrated strategy that guides the Upper Feather River region. So that's kind of where
Implement's a really big word, because otherwise mission statements are dead.
implement it.
Wow.
And first you're actually going to do something, which is always hard.
Would it be possible to one statement that I like is on 3. I think you could be rolled into the beginning of 1, I agree with Task Force Administrator, to effectively perpetuate local control and regional collaboration. I think that line is real important. I'd like to see that incorporated into the mission statement. And I think you could say
Kind of
that.
marries into the first.
Yeah, it
First one.
does. So to provide stability,
Right.
to provide stability.
Yeah.
Because the local control and the regional collaboration is really kind of, I think, quite legit.
Right. And I think we need to, it's really important to make that clear, because I know I had a constituent that contacted me and they told me to take water. And for some reason, they had it totally twisted in their mind that this was something coming from the state and we were totally losing local control. I was like, how in the world can you do this and what was written? And I think it's really important in the mission statement to make that it is local control that we're trying to protect. So I like that. I think, yeah, just to take that first part of number 3 and add it to the first part of number 1 that we like,
And then close it with
add it
number
to number
4.
4.
Yeah, I don't think you have to say how we're going to do it.
Right.
That's the
Right.
Because we may,
Right.
and we may change how we're going to do it when we
Yeah,
fail.
exactly. Gives us a backup, go back.
So, what did you kind of get that?
So from 3 to effectively perpetuate local control and regional collaboration, to provide stability and consistency in the planning, management, and coordination of resources within the Upper Feather River watershed period.
Mm-hmm. And then number 4.
And then to implement an integrated strategy.
Okay, did I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second? Yes, second. All moved? All in favor? Opposed? I got it. That's a miracle.
I'm gonna say good job, mission statement.
I know, I've spent some organizations 6
One
months
word.
trying to come up with one word. Yeah,
Fighting.
Yeah, you guys are good. Okay.
We were prompted by it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Set us up for success.
That's right.
And she's trying out just so we can.
Yeah,
Exercise.
Yeah, make us look like
Yeah,
we're
really,
really
yeah,
smart.
right.
Nice work.
Okay, item 4, call for science and technical steps.
Okay, so one of the tasks in the work plan for the plan update is to develop a baseline technical study that will be a basis for updating the regional description and for developing the baseline conditions for the plan. So in your packets, there's a draft call for science and technical studies letter that will serve 2 purposes. One is to collect information for the baseline study and also to further encourage stakeholders' participation in the plan update by getting more involved and providing information. The information collected will become part of a database that will be available on the website. And then Zeke can give a little bit more information about that and how it might look when he gives his presentation a little bit later. So what we're asking for today is your review or discussion of the draft letter that's in the packet. And if it's approved, we would send it out to the stakeholders, to the workers, to entities in the basin.
Any comments? Anybody think something changed? You like it? Don't like it? You read it or you didn't read it? I think it's a good letter. And again, it appears to call out most of the items that we're really looking at in the planning process, as far as the assessment and the case. No one? Gary? Anybody want to make a motion allowing you to move ahead with this letter? Okay, is there a second? All in favor? Opposed? Good. Got a letter. Yeah, we're going to get a break before we hardly got started.
Moving along.
Don't believe in this. Item 5, introduction of project development. This might take a while.
Okay, so today is really the intent is to give you an introduction to the overall project development process. So we'll give an overview of the minimum considerations for projects and the required in the DWI guidelines. An introduction to the project development manual that has been prepared for various OERs in the state. Go over the eligibility requirements for projects, the preferences that DWR gives to projects, and an approach to project solicitation and review processes. And then go through the project development steps, summary of meetings that are dedicated to the project development process, and a draft timeline, and then I'll briefly go over potential for funding for future projects.
And I think you mentioned that the manual is that so far, no other IRWM has adopted. That's kind of neat.
It was recently developed. It was just came out earlier this year, and it was part of another AVIC task under I believe it was the Upper Hill project. So it's just completed and it hasn't been released yet. Most of the grant had already been submitted.
That's great.
So projects are the vehicle flow plan implementation. They should be designed to address the issues that are raised through the objectives, development of objectives, issues identified through the work groups and the disadvantaged community outreach and the tribal engagement. It starts with a project solicitation package, and then projects are vetted and prioritized, and then finally they're included in the plan for future grant funds. Just to give a little overview of the project development manual, and I did include that in your packet. I know it's a lot of paper, but I thought it was a really good step-by-step process that was developed. So it's a project proposal development guide for project sponsors and proponents. So it's developed to gear towards disadvantaged communities and stakeholder groups that have really limited staffing and financial technical capabilities at their disposal. And it's tailored for the urban program, although it is useful for any grant process. The projects that go through, the steps that you go through in that manual result in projects that are developed to a point that will be effective for other grant applications. The manual does include templates and tools to assist in developing those proposals and applications. And as I mentioned, it was completed earlier this year and hasn't been used by any of the others.
Is there any feedback yet?
It's actually kind of hard to get, so I don't know that anything has been released widely yet.
This was a project of the Caddy region who has cleaned up on all the money that's here. So they certainly know how to build a process and actually execute to get most of the money. And so they I think were reluctant to release it to competitors before this last round was done. That's why I think it was so hard to get.
I can't say that.
And we just were on a DAC capacity training or small capacity training for IRWM. I even gave it to the planners. They didn't put it up on the website. So I don't know why it's stuck somewhere, but I don't really care because we got it. And Cabby has used it to great effect. And it's definitely a reference we should consider.
It might not be very clear.
Well, right, especially since they're so successful. It doesn't guarantee that we're successful, but they certainly know how to help in every dot and make sure it's covered in the proposal.
One thing that Emma said that really caught me is that by using something like this, you're really preparing yourself for any grant because of the methodical way that you have to do those grants. I have a great respect for those who know how to write grants. It's not my forte per se, but a tool like this really helps in grant writing and preparing to do those kinds of things. So I just want to kind of emphasize that in his remarks. It is, and it's painful, but you get a pretty good product with a chance to get a grant from the one that follows something like this, and it's saying do this. So it's up to you to what you decide.
Any suggestions you have for whether or not you've made changes?
I might recommend some changes to some of the forms in the back just to make them a little bit more straightforward, but I think it provides a really good step-by-step process for people who aren't used to the more technical needs requirements. And I think what I would recommend is to post this information on the website and for use by the work groups and help guide you the process.
Yeah.
Well, we stole it from Kevin.
Nice.
Oh, well. Any other comments? You like it? You don't like it? You get it? See?
Got a comment just based on the work we did on the Northern Sectorial Plan. For that plan, they hired a consultant to build this really complicated website, project submission form. And they do a lot of, if you had an idea for a project, then you went through and checked all these boxes and wrote descriptions. It was handy, but it was really complicated technically. And as soon as the project was over, the consultant wanted to keep charging, $1,000 a month or whatever to host this database. And it took a lot of work on the part of Shasta County to kind of peel that database out of the consultant's hands and back to someone who could maintain it at little cost. So one thing I like about this manual is that it's written out, it's solid, and it's not complicated. So what I'd say is, you go forward is, if you can maintain a spreadsheet or something as a way of scoring projects rather than something complicated, proprietary, that's something that causes a lot of problems to the other group. So kind of picking this really technical solution of how to score projects. And it was handy in that you could dump everyone's project in there and they'd say, oh, this one's a 52 and that one's a 42. But it's a little bit too complicated for actually maintaining for the group that's kind of on.
Thank you. That's a good suggestion. And I've seen that failure at work. So I agree. It is really hard to make it so complicated and so inaccessible. It's really complicated. I would say we entertain a motion to approve the use of the manual of the project and with the exception of reserving the right to alter some of the forms as we see fit to make them easier to use. So what do they want to make that motion? All in favor? Opposed?
I'd just would like to add is that before you do post this and you get to that stage, you make sure that you have a discussion with the board about that. I'd like to see what it's going to be and how it's going to be. I think that's really important for the board to understand what's going to go out there before it's final.
Just pull the forms from it.
Yeah,
Post it, and then the forms just get added.
Bring the forms back next meeting.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I agree. Sometimes the forms.
Because a lot of the meat is more, that's the notebook, not the form.
That's it. Well, and the thing is, you can have the whole manual, but then if the forms are confusing or complicated, it shoots down all the benefit of the manual that made pretty good sense till somebody read the forms and like, what the heck are they?
The one nice thing about having the forms in there is that they did include some examples of how to fill in some of those questions, which might be beneficial.
So it just came to my mind is that I'd like to make sure that the board understands what's going to be publicly out there prior to when it goes there. I just want to make sure that gets clear. That was my recommendation. Whether it's this or anything, I think we should all know what's out there before we find out and get somebody to come back and say, what the heck is this doing? I don't know.
Yeah,
I think we should,
I don't think we'll be doing anything that isn't specified in this year. I think we've heard some lessons from the past, and that's it. Okay, if that's nothing else there.
And ultimately, we are then talking about putting up the document, developing the forms, bringing it into the document.
Right.
Right, good.
That was the direction. Afternoon recess, I don't know that we need it right now, but since we're only going to sit here a little over a half hour, anybody need to take a break?
Well, I do have some more stuff.
Okay, go ahead.
That's okay, we can do it after break or up to now.
I don't think we want it.
So these are some project eligibility guidelines from the guidelines. The projects must yield multiple benefits and include one of the following elements. Yes, they are from the property flow guidelines. Right. The property flow still guides the plan update process. So it has to address one of these elements, at least one. Water supply reliability, conservation, and water use efficiency, stormwater capture, management, removal of invasive non-native species, or creation and enhancement of wetlands, acquisition, protection, restoration of open space and watershed lands, non-point source pollution reduction, management and monitoring, groundwater recharge and management projects, contaminant and salt removal through reclamation, using conveyance and reclaimed water distribution, water banking, exchange, reclamation, improvement of water quality, planning and implementation of multi-purpose flood management programs, watershed protection and management, basic water treatment and distribution, and or ecosystem and fisheries restoration and protection. So DWR gives preference to projects that do provide multiple benefits and those that integrate water management with land use planning. Also, preference to projects that resolve significant water-related conflicts with and between regions. Those that contribute to the attainment of water objectives such as an objective program, address statewide priorities, or address the critical water supply or water quality needs for disadvantaged communities. There are some minimum considerations. The projects must address the plan's goals and objectives. And I'd like to note that we plan on bringing the goals and objectives to the management group at the next meeting in January. How the project is related to the source management strategies that are selected for this plan. We also consider the technical feasibility of the project and the project costs and financing, and the specific benefits to disadvantaged communities, the specific benefits to critical water issues and sites. They consider environmental justice, economic feasibility, considering water quality and water supply benefits, and other anticipated benefits and costs. Strategic considerations for plan implementation, and the contribution of the project in adapting to the effects of climate change and reducing GHG emissions. Just a little very general flow chart for the project development process. It starts with the project solicitation and goes to project submittal. And at that point, projects are screened out. Those that go forward to the project review and selection process are then go through a screening process, and then finally to the project prioritization and inclusion of the plan. There are some options for how to proceed with the development and review process. Urban regions do it differently. These are two suggestions. One is a phased approach, and one would be more of a direct approach. The phased approach would be project solicitation for conceptual level proposals, which would then go through an initial vetting and review for minimum requirements. And then it would also allow for early integration of projects that might help the smaller districts out as far as getting those proposals together. And then an additional request for information would be made, and then it would go through the thorough review of projects and make the prioritization. A more direct route would be just to do a more comprehensive project solicitation package. And then the integration would occur at a work group workshop that would include all the workers of the management group. And then it would go through the same process, the thorough review and the prioritization. So some benefits of the phased approach, it encourages identification of new projects in the conceptual solicitation phase. Projects that may not be as developed might maybe hesitate to go through a full submittal process They make them easier projects that are further along in the process. It provides an opportunity for everyone to see the range of projects that are within the region, and then also an opportunity to suggest alternative funding sources for conceptual projects that might not make it through the overall process. And then it provides an enhanced potential and earlier on for project integration, which could promote the multi-benefit project development. And it could be a more manageable approach with small understaffed districts and organizations. She mentioned the DAC workshop, outreach workshop that we went to. I talked to quite a few of the small districts that have gone through other urban project development processes, and their biggest struggle was getting these project packages together. Many of them don't have staff, and the board members are having to dig through files in someone's basement. So that's definitely a struggle for them to consider. The direct approach, it would be a comprehensive project solicitation package with projects submitted with like the range from conceptual to fully developed. The opportunity for project integration would be at the work group level, at a coordination workshop. One of the two that will occur over the update process. It is a more streamlined approach. You don't have to go back to a request for information. So it could facilitate a shorter project development process.
Isn't that a little bit of a function on how well the work groups do their outreach? I mean, and the streamline looks really good if the work groups are actually functioning good. Are they not with smaller input?
Here we are all working about, well, you know, it kind of depends on where people are. I mean, if they haven't really thought about all this, there's going to be some education. You know, yeah, we do ag, but what's this water thing got to do with ag? Yeah, we do forestry. What's this water thing got to do with forestry? Why do we want to put projects through this when we've got our other sources of funds? I mean, there's going to be this whole, why are we doing this? What do we get on doing it this way versus another way? What do we get about doing it together? And we haven't had those conversations with the work groups yet, and so, you know, we're going to be asking to think about projects right away, but I don't know. I don't know that we're going to be able to get everybody. And the best project may be the one nobody's thought of before.
Oh, but I mean, that's still a work group outreach. One thing, I think it was brought up at one point, possibility of literally doing TV. Boom, it's certainly. that literally walks people through this thing instead of getting 4 different versions or 10 different versions and variants and a lot of opinions. It's just a very nice, concise presentation. They walk through it, they can watch it, they can pause it, they let it happen. But, you know, it's going to take a lot of work, and if you're trying to educate your way through this, I don't think we've got 2 years is long.
I think people have projects in their minds. I think it's just trying to fit them together and put them in this
That's,
package. The work groups are probably going to be recording this. We're going to be talking a lot about, do we see anything that's crossing over? Do we see any early leaders? All that kind of thing. But
and that's truly the working level.
But we also are going to have hearings for people that may not be in a work group that still want to offer something. So we don't think it's going to be that tidy.
Well, hardly ever hears, but one of the things that just mentioned, Albus Cutman, was that we're wanting to kind of come into the electronic age. We figure that in about over this 2-year period, we'll have different faces at the table, maybe here, as well as at the work group level. So rather than every time somebody new comes in, starting at ground zero and explaining to them what is a work group and how they function, how they some of the basic information, and probably some of the basic information contained in this, that we could do a video. And most recently, we had a correspondence about it being done in a question and answer type of format. And then that video could be posted on the website so that anytime a new person joins, they get the same information as everybody else got. And somebody doesn't have to take the time to sit and try to bring them up to speed. So that's one of the things we look at as a tool.
They're literally a training thing. I mean, My goodness, it's used everything. He's been a flyer thing.
So I think that's probably a good thing. The work groups, it's probably hard to make a decision between which method if we had to make a decision until they kind of have a few meetings and kind of see how that all works, I think. And then maybe that's something that we could look at as we get the work groups on a little bit better. Because I agree, we work with a lot of special districts that have no employees, and the records are in the basement or somebody's garage or shed. And I know how difficult it is to get them to get things together, and probably individually they don't even have the capacity to really do a project, but maybe through the work groups and partnering with other people with similar interests, they might be able to pull together the project. So I always lean toward the simple direct approach, but I'm thinking in this instance it may be better to take the more roundabout way if we really want to encourage too much project. So I think probably rather than trying to decide one or the other, just probably kind of get a feel for what's happening in the work group, and then maybe even make a decision based on combination.
Toughest part is encouraging them to engage. I think that's the point.
Yeah, I'd like to see us, it's early because I don't know who's going to pay for it, but I'd like to see some kind of professional process. In other words, there is some way to pay for some consultant / paid staff or something that is the rock of the organization that allows us to have assist work groups, each one of the work groups to say, this is how you do the project. It actually gets looked at by somebody that's really qualified. Yeah, it meets this criteria. The project meets this criteria. And I don't know how we...
And challenging them at the same time.
And you just kind of describe it.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to figure out, so in other words, whom I'd like to figure out, I can keep you on the payroll. So, I don't know how we can do it. But there needs to be a process that if we can get that into the grant process, in other words, that's part of the 2% or the 4% that allows us to professionally help the work groups, because the work groups are going to do all the work, we're going to have some pretty tight horses. So what we need to do is we need to incorporate someone that we would have, and then the work group change, which is natural, then therefore we still would have the continuity of the person and the process would have continuity. That's my comment.
And there's a lot of pledging going on here.
I'm going to say something. We know that there might be one more round of Prop 84 funding, and we're going to, as you can tell, we're structuring some of this towards that, and I think that we'll go back to the issue of where we're going with these projects and other funding sources. And the opportunity to structure everything so that other funding sources can be used in the projects. Some initial vetting is somewhat good. I know on the SRA grants that are going out right now, they actually have that concept in today. I learned that yesterday at the Fire Safety Council. The real details will come in a few months. Just wanted to keep in mind, the work groups haven't met yet, and the coordinators are here and they're getting meetings together and everything else. And, probably going to take a few meetings, but everybody's going to walk in with some concept of projects in mind when those meetings start. I go back again to problem solving with the projects. What's the problem you're trying to solve? And then we go through all this intense paperwork and a grant application to try to get money and articulate that and make it fit into the template that the funders are asking for. Just wanted to keep that in mind.
Well, that's where this hypothetical video works. I mean, you just literally walk through the entire, pick an image, here's a project. How do we get through this project? How it functions? It's only hypothetical, but they've got a roadmap.
That's also the benefit of the manual. copies if you guys have realized.
Absolutely. But this is the visual for the manual that people don't read.
It sounds like you're talking about doing a phased approach for more inclusive. Having been a part of the Willis-County Resource Advisory Committee that's associated with secure schools legislation that's now expired. Having been through that process and being a current member of that committee, we chose to do just that phased approach, very inclusive, all those examples that were listed there were important things that we wanted to include in that process because we wanted to be inclusive. It was new at that time, and we didn't know what we were going to get. So it enabled people to develop proposals, learn through a process. We as a committee were learning the process just as you're talking about experience. So based on the experience that I had with our local research group, pursue a similar approach. With the eventual, I mean, what it eventually happened for us, we were seeing the same components over and over, largely the same set of projects. So at that point in time, we never did actually get this approach, but we defined that. But the reason we didn't was we were seeing the same ones over and over, so it almost simplified by itself.
Sort of almost a process of change. And thank you, those are good comments, because it is good to learn from this. And probably, I guess, will be a lot of the things we will see will be the same people that see.
One comment kind of ties into what we're doing with the website is that one of the benefits of being one of the last regions in the state to do their update is that all the other regions have already done this process and vetted projects. So I think it could be useful to have links on our website to prove projects in the other IRWM. So if someone wants to go ahead and propose, well, I want to do a fish passage project, give them resources to go look at what was done on the Ute River, somewhere else.
I think that's a
Absolutely, by example,
Yeah.
that's your template.
Yeah.
Because then there's also projects that have been approved, so a list of that would give people an idea of what CWR is already farming, what their priorities are.
Or introduce them to projects nobody even thought of.
Yeah, I think the more we can put on the website to help people and link to other successful information, the better. Because as Mike said, we're kind of pulling our way along to this, so we're all with projects.
Well, it's interesting when you look at, we've been in the past on some projects to do websites to help organize project proposals. And some places like the LA Basin or the San Diego County you literally have hundreds and hundreds of proposals. So a lot of work's going to be geared towards these places where you're going to have hundreds of nonprofits and a large all going for it. And there were proposals to put in security cameras to catch people that were littering in the LA River. So I think we're lucky up here that maybe we'll have 50 good projects instead of 500 that are all over the map. But it gives you that context of where the scope of money is going and what the issues are. They really like seeing inter-regional projects. So if we can get the list of projects for the Northern South Valley in the overlap area, like Oroville, I think they want to see that you're looking at what's going on in your neighboring regions and doing projects at times.
They have to index somehow too, so they can see what has the appeal. Yes.
Yeah.
Probably a lot of similarities as you go through them.
Oh yeah, no, pretty quickly go. That's
This is
the
our
buzzword.
Yeah.
So there are a number of hearings and workshops and meetings that will be part of the project development process. We have 2 project solicitation hearings included in the work plan. Those are to encourage an all-inclusive process, and as Nina mentioned, it's to pull in folks that aren't necessarily involved in the work groups to let them also have a forum for them to introduce projects that they would like to see for consideration. And then also we'd be able to give an overview of the submission process and answer questions during those meetings. And then the intent of having 2 of them is to occur in different places in the watershed. We had a project prioritization workshop included in the work plan also, and it's intended to be kind of a one last look at the project before inclusion in the plan. And that's so we can take a final look, make sure we have a really good suite of projects that address climate change and all the other aspects that DWR wants to see as a benefit and also. So that's kind of towards the end of the process, just before we put the document. The work groups, one of their 2 integration workshops, one for each year. The first year is spirituals projects, so that would be the time for them first to really work at the work group level all together to see what projects we can pull together to collaborate on those. And then the way the schedule is right now, the project presentations will be made by the work groups at the 5th management group meeting, and then prioritization at the 6th management group meeting. That would be then in July next year.
I did hear once, also, I believe in the last meeting, you brought up that especially fresh with Woodbridge, really, we're moving along, but a little bit confused. This group isn't absolutely locked into that town. And if there's a occasion for a special meeting, we should do it.
Yeah. So for steps for the project development, we need to establish the urban goals and objectives, which we'll be bringing to the next meeting in January. Then we will need to establish the development and review process and develop a project solicitation package, and then schedule those project solicitation hearings, and work on developing the prioritization criteria, and then go through the process. This is a general timeline. Again, keeping in mind what you mentioned, that it may be adjusted somewhat. It's included in the packet, but it's pretty much to go over the next 8 months that we'll go over the next 8 months. Just wanted to briefly go over the potential for future funding. We touched on it already, but as far as the Proposition 84 implementation funds, round 2 is the implementation round that's left. The monies that were in the round 3 package have been split for the drought implementation solicitation that went out earlier this year, and the remaining funds, when we talked to DWR staff, they indicated that that fund pool is quite a bit smaller, and they expect the competition to be pretty fierce for those funds. And then also, it's unlikely that our plan will be completed in time to see those funds. So, it is
The last round, yeah.
That's the last round. So it looks like the next best opportunity for funding will come out of the Proposition 1A, and I don't know the details of that, but in general, they tagged about $810 million for the urban regions, and those are regions with adopted plans that are consistent with the Property 4 guidelines. And out of that, they've tagged about $37 million for the Sacramento River hydrologic region and $13 million for the Mountain Performance Overlay. So that would be the regions that the other federal. So in the packets, we've also included, at the last meeting, someone mentioned that they would like to see where the Prop 50 projects were at this time, so Randy did include a memo at the back of that packet. And we also included the example project list that was included in the 2005 budget as well, and that's for information. It was a different process then, and they didn't identify them as prioritized projects, but more example projects that they would like to see.
Anybody want me to talk about my memo?
Yeah, I think it would probably be helpful for people to understand where we are in the top 50 process.
So briefly, in 2009, we found out county, not really flood control district, signed a grant, and it was Supervisor Frall that was the chair that signed the grant for basically $7 million in grant funding for $8,528,685 worth of projects. That include the 25% match. The original projects in that grant were the Last Chance 2 restoration project, and I'm just going to talk about the grant funds, not the total project cost. And that was $2,621,421. Currently, through the board direction, we are reprogramming what's left in that, which is approximately $2.2 million. A few weeks ago, the Board of Supervisors approved one of those reprogramming projects, which is $1,290,000 to go into the Greenville CSD for water and sewer lines that are associated with the Caltrans Highway 89 project in East Moss. There was what's called the Upper Middle Fork study, and that's a study by Dr. Cavas from UC Davis in the Sierra Valley. At some point, we're going to give you a presentation on that study. I've asked Lee to start putting together reports, and I had a conversation with Dr. Cavas on Monday. Paul knows this because I called him afterwards about weather stations associated with it. And he's teaching a class, a pretty heavy class this semester, and he's kind of led me to believe the potential is we might be able to get him to come up and talk about the project after completion. The Quincy Wetlands Project, basically at the treatment plant out here, it was $261,404. We are looking at some augmentation for Quincy Wetlands. Somewhere around $200,000 as part of the reprogramming and the processing that with DWR. And at some point, I'll be bringing that to the Board of Supervisors. National Forest Water Quality Improvement Project. This was another big element of the grant. $1,927,448. Just recently, the Board of Supervisors did an amendment to that project, and it's basically for work on roads and ditches and culverts to reduce sediment load into these streams. The Forest Service had some slightly different ideas on how to spend that in different areas, and we made those modifications. So they were a big beneficiary of the last grant round. I don't know if many people knew that. Arcade Ranch, Genesee Valley. This is a Feather River Land Trust project to work on their agricultural water system. Originally, the project was to redo the conveyance system from Taylor Lake down into Genesee Valley. They're currently rethinking that project. We're working with them and UWR staff on a slightly different project within that budget. Sierra Valley Well Capping Project. That project got initiated. There was a lot of inventory done, but the actual capping, we've been working with the groundwater district. I think I've talked to them over the last year. Finally got their concurrence to have Brookhart Rome do some more water work out there in terms of trying to identify groundwater recharge areas and isotope studies. That, by the way, will dovetail with the Caucus project. We've got information on changes the groundwater district incurred to change the project slightly. BWR is in concurrence with that. We're just trying to get paperwork done for that, and that will be remaining in the same budget.
Capping suggests abandoned wells.
I think Mr. Roberti will probably know more about the abandoned wells than I do. Sierra Valley's been occupied for a long time. There used to be artesian flows, a number of small wells. Paul probably knows, but you can articulate about.
Yeah, there's a well short stem.
The relationship between those wells, I think, and the actual aquifer is probably not even the same as when it was originally, they were thinking about doing it. And then the Sierra Valley Water Management Plan, water management. I'm going to ask Leah to articulate that one. That was tied in with the land trust.
There was a lot about piloting irrigation headworks improvements. You know how some of them are getting eroded around and the whole cable sinking, and in some places it matters, in some places it doesn't. And everybody was toiling around trying to figure out, do you want to do something about this, and what would you do? So that project is not the head cave improvements have not been accomplished, but they went over to NRCS where they were waiting. Remember when we had this big hiccup and all the funds for bonds and the state was going bankrupt, remember all that? So anyway, so they went ahead and they got NRCS funds to go ahead and finish that part, but they completed all the fencing and the off-site water and all the other things that, 8 years ago were kind of remarkable. Now everybody's doing it. So, that's kind of where the project sits. It's finished in terms of this sort of funds, but to actually do the headgate improvements is going to be waiting on federal funds from NRCS. In fact, they have them, or it's somewhere in that process.
And then overall, just recently, the Board of Supervisors approved a contract with Kuhn Consulting to do the invoicing for Prop 50. It's something that I've struggled with since I was assigned the Prop 50 grant. So we're close. There's still some work. What's that?
Nothing. I said they'll actually get done.
Yeah, it'll actually get done now. It hasn't been done since spring.
Hey,
Sorry about that.
He's got a new iPad, don't worry about it.
That'll fix everything.
So, right now officially we've reallocated the money to the Greenville project at just under $1.4 million, leaving, at probably 800,000 that we're still working on. We have numerous projects in the pipeline that we're working on. Not some of them are not complete. I don't want to get into the details of all of them because they're still in the pipeline. So we're getting close to kind of getting this grant buttoned up. The changes to the Genesee need to be reviewed by DWR. So the grant is finally going to get, I think, within the next few months, some solidarity that it hasn't had since I've had it for 3 years. And with the invoicing help, be able to kind of fulfill it and get it done by the end of 2015. I will state, and I had a conversation with Dr. Cavas about this, he really needs that study of Sierra Valley needs a couple good years of reasonable weather with the weather stations. The weather stations, 2 of them are in the process, I hope, of getting installed this year. We already know, and I've had conversation with PWR staff, that project probably won't be completed, although the model itself is running. It's been running for over a year. So we're going to have to pressure DWR for an extension just on that other project. All the other ones should be completed by the end of the year 2015. So I'm setting the table to put some political pressure on DWR on the study down the line, because we would hate to spend all that money, do all that work, get all that computer work going, and then have to shut it off and not have it really completed set. So I'm prepared to go fight with DWR to get an extension for that project only. I don't think they would give it to any other, the reprogramming of any of the other projects. So that's sort of where Prop 50 is. One of note is the Upper Feather region got $7 million in the grant as a result of the last IRWM, which is no small matter. It's a lot of money.
So basically all of the projects, with the exception of the upper middle court study, you expect to be closed out by the end of 2015.
I do.
Yep.
The land trust money, she spoke of what's going to happen with that for the next year.
Well, they're using everything except about 40K, isn't it? Something like that. So that's in the hopper, but we don't know where these other projects are finalized out yet. So it's in motion, but we don't know where it's going.
It's also going to be, if anything, the portion of that is earmarked to the invoicing through the contract. So we know we can pay for that invoicing. In the end, I'll have to shore up the grant. When all the numbers come in, we straighten it all out. And the grant agreement's actually set up with these numbers. So there's the ability to move between these numbers in the end to share everything up to final the grant and move on. Just a comment about grants, and we're talking about projects and grants and the capacity of the districts to get grants. They are a lot of work to put together, and they are a lot of work to maintain to meet all the standards down the line. And unfortunately, it seems like that's where the money's coming from these days, is from grants.
The tragedy is that it takes another grant to pay the class for this grant writer.
So that's Prop 50.
So just to make sure I understand, we're okay to post the manual as is with the draft templates at the back of it at this time? Okay.
And then you're going to revise the revisions of templates.
To the form.
Yeah, and we'll be bringing those probably the next meeting. And I'll try to create them so that we can use them either as a base approach or as a full package. Yeah.
One, before we move on, one of the things I want to mention is UMA had sent out an email asking for steering group persons to be assigned to different working groups. And I contacted her because I have seen this in action in a number of different organizations similar to what we're trying to do here. And I feel that it really creates a problem. So what I wanted to make clear is any member of the steering group can go to any working group meeting and can go to all of the working group meetings if they wish. But I don't think we want to assign a specific steering group member to the working group. Number one, we want the working group to do their work and bring it to us. And my experience is if you have somebody in the decision-making position who is assigned to the working group tends to default to them thinking that person, when they make a statement or approve something, that they're speaking for the whole steering group, and they aren't. And I think it also creates an atmosphere where one person has more knowledge on a subject than the group, and it makes it really hard for the group to evaluate making decisions without the same knowledge base. And to some extent, it almost creates a brownout problem because they do that kind of thing. So I think that rather than assigning somebody officially so that it appears that this is your liaison to the board, and if they tell you, yeah, we really like that project, or a better example might be to say, that person says to a working group, no, don't go down that road, I don't like that. But the whole rest of the steering committee would have liked it if they never come to them, and the working group never brings it to them because of the conflict. So I think it needs to be really clear that this group makes decisions as a group, and we've decided to make those decisions by majority vote. So I don't think that it's a really good policy to say Paul belongs to this work group, because I know Paul well enough to know that he's probably take over that work group, right? And the work group according to Paul. So, and I may be accused of that myself. So I think that we'll leave it at that with how we structure the steering groups interface with the working group. We're all free to go. There's something on the agenda that interests us, or if it's a group that we're passionate about. But the working groups also need to understand that that person is only there as that individual person, not as in a capacity as members. So with that, you have anything else on that item? Okay, need any further direction? Okay, anybody want to take a break? Or you want to go into the website first? Yeah, let's take about a 10-minute break. Let's get everything set. I saw that. I know. I had it. I was like, that's the one. Let's see if it's 10 minutes. But